We're now on Daf Chav Ches Amud Beis, and we're talking about giving something as chalipin. So let's say, for example, Reuven gives Shimon a chamor, and he expects to be kona a para. So now he's kona the para the very moment that the shar was given to him, and that's called the chayav b'chalipin. So therefore, the kona will now suffer the loss in the event that the object is destroyed. Dekar Nami, the Gemara now wants to prove that we're not talking about kesef, because ein matbei nasa chalipin, from a diuk in the Mishnah. The Mishnah says the ketani ketzad hichlif shar bepara or chamor b'shar. Now, if the Mishnah is talking about matbei and we're holding matbei nasa chalipin, then the Mishnah should have said ketzad hichlif mos bepara. Shema Mino, from the fact that the Mishnah says hichlif shar bepara, it means that we're talking about something which is in the language of the Gemara on Beis before nishom b'dom. The Gemara says l'mai disalke daikmei kardem atbea nasa chalipin mai ketzad, and in the Havamina that we thought that when it says domim, it means mamish domim, it means matbea, and matbea can be used to effectuate a kinyan sudar, and it's nasa chalipin. So how do you interpret the ketzad, where the Mishnah says he swapped a shar for a paro, chamor for a shar? That's not a kinyan chalipin in matbea. Hachi kamar. This is the way we would have interpreted the Mishnah, the seif of the Mishnah. Peiros nami avdi chalipin. Even peiros can serve as chalipin. You don't need a kli. Ketzad, besar shor bepara, or besar chamor beshor, kevin shezach ezeh, nischayev bechalipin. So we're talking about the besar chamor, the besar paro, which is clearly peiros, and it's not kelim, and yet you can effectuate a kinyan chalipin with peiros. So according to this explanation of the Mishnah is teaching us two things. Number one, that matbea nasa chalipin. Number two, that peiros nasa chalipin. In the case of basar shar or basar chamor. However, the Gemara already rejected this interpretation because the maskana of the Gemara about Metzia is matbea eina nasa chalipin. But now we have machlokas about peiros. And that's a machlokas about Metzia Mem Zayin between Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshes. Can you effectuate chalipin with peiros or only with a kli? According to Rav Sheshes, he has a broader scope for chalipin, and even peiros can effectuate chalipin. And that means that when the Torah says Visholaf ish nalo, it doesn't mean exactly na'al, which is a kli, but anything that's not a matbea. But according to Rav Nachman, who rejects Rav Sheshes, he says Sholaf ish nalo. Nalo is a kli. And dafka kli could effectuate chalipin, like a sudar, of course. And all that is dumya dinal, but not peiros. So how do we interpret our Mishnah according to Rav Nachman, who says that only kalim could effectuate chalipin? I can understand our Mishnah in the case of para or besar para, etc., that could effectuate chalipin because Rav Sheshes expands the scope of chalipin to include even peri. You cannot effectuate chalipin without a kli. Is Michael Meimer Basar? Shar is not a kli. So how are you going to interpret the Mishnah? That even if he didn't do a Mashicha on the chefetz, on the metaltalin, the kinyan is valid, and he's going to have to give him the balance of the domin. And what does it mean? Kol shenase domin v'acher. That's referring to matbea, and it means that he has to pay him for all the other things. In other words, once the mocher receives the matbea, then the kona is chai b'achrayis on the chefetz. Not b'toras chalipin, because we're holding ein matbeh nasa chalipin, but rather mitam kinyan kesef. Ketzad, in what situation is kesef kona? Hechlif dmei shar b'para. So he paid him domim, which means kesef, but not the full value. O dmei chamor b'shar, or he owes him domim for the chamor that he purchased, and the lokeach gave him a shar, and now we'll evaluate the shar, and he's kona b'toras kesef. In other words, the shar has a certain value. So now when he gives him the shar, he's kona the para through shava kesef, which is like kesef, even though he didn't make a mashicha. My timer. Okay, so now we introduce the machlokas Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish about whether the Torah recognizes the kinyan kesef. So we're going to go according to Rabbi Yochanan, everything is going to fit into place. That if you're giving a shor as kesef, a shava kesef, for the purchase of a chamor, it's valid because the Torah does recognize kinyan kesef in metaltal. Sovelak Rabbi Yochanan, the Omar, the Torah, most konos. The Torah maintains that you can acquire ownership over metaltalin with mos. Why did the Chachamim establish that mos enam konos and you need a mashiach on the chayfetz? Because if he pays him the money, he hasn't yet received the chitim that he's buying. The chitim is still in the storehouse of the mocher, and if a fire breaks out, the mocher has no vested interest in saving the chitim from the fire. He won't be matriach to save them because he's already bequeathed or transferred ownership over the chitim to the buyer through kinyan kesef. So the Rabbanan made a takon and said, hold everything. Kesef is not going to be kona, and therefore the only way he'll be kona is when he does a mashicha on the tvua in this case, on the chitim. And therefore, when the kinyan is chal, the chitim are already in the possession of the kona, and if a fire breaks out, he'll do the best he could to save his tvua from them. But when do we say that the Rabbanan made this gzeira and they suspended the efficacy of a kinyan kesef? That's only b'milsa the shliach. That's only if it's a regular kind of kinyan kesef. Is gozrei rabbanon. However, we have a principle of milsa lo shchicha lo gozrei rabbanon, and now we get to a milsa lo shchicha. What does it mean? He comes to pay up his chov for which he bought, let's say, the para by giving him a shor. That's not the normal way that you buy a para. Instead of paying cash currency, he gives him a shor. His lo gozrei rabbanon, and the rabbanon did not undermine and negate the kinyan kesef. Okay, that's all fine and dandy according to Rabbi Yochanan. But what about Reish Lakish? The Torah only recognizes a kinyan mashicha metaltalin, but there's no kinyan kesef according to the Torah law on metaltalin. And if we cannot interpret our Mishnah that you can be kona something through domim, if you make a barter exchange, because the Torah doesn't recognize such an exchange of kesef, meaning shavah kesef. Hanichi sover, however, we could work this out according to Rav Sheshes the Peres Avli Chalipin. He's not giving the chamor b'toras kesef for a kinyan kesef, but rather he's giving the chamor b'toras chalipin, and we said that basar chamor, basar shor, whatever it might be, is considered like peiros, and if Reish Lakish accepts Rav Sheshes, is then we can interpret the Reish of our Mishnah is talking about what? Is talking about peiros, right? Basar, ha, shor, etc., etc. And it means that the Reish is teaching me that kol anisham domim v'yachar means all metaltalin that needs shuma can be konaviv chalipin if you switch one for the other, one metaltalin for another metaltalin. And a kinyan is not a kinyan kesef, but a kinyan chalipin. However, Yisavr Loker of Nachman over Peri, Lo Avdi Chalipin, you cannot effectuate a kinyan Chalipin with Peri, only with what? With a Kli V'Shalaf Nishnalo. Umat Bea Delokoni. And if I add to boot that you cannot effectuate a kinyan Chalipin with what? With Matbea. So you've excluded Peri and you've excluded Matbea. Is B'may Mukile. How are you going to interpret our Mishnah? So there's a very explosive combination of A, B, and C. A, if you hold like Reish Lakish that the Torah does not recognize the kinyan kesef. B, if you hold like Rav Nachman that there's no opportunity to effectuate a kinyan chalip with peri. Number 3, if you hold like the Maskon of the Gemara B'Metzia that you cannot effectuate a kinyan chalip with matbea. So b'may mukile al koch we have no option but to introduce Reish Lakish. I'm sorry, Rav Sheshes. And that's al kocha k'Rav Sheshes sfirule that Paris osa chalipin. And so just to summarize, there are 3 ways of interpreting our Mishnah. Number 1, that kol anase b'domim b'acher is referring to matbea and matbea nasa chalipin. Paris also is nasa chalipin. So when he's machliv b'sar shor b'pora or b'sar chamor b'shor, then he effectuates a kinyan chalipin. But again, this first interpretation has to be rejected because we hold la'alocha ein matbea nasa chalipin. But we have 2 other possible ways of learning the Mishnah. That kol anisham dom v'acher means all metaltal and nasam chalipin. So he's machliv b'sar shor b'pora or b'sar chamor b'shor. And that reflects the shita of Sheshes that Paris osam chalipin. And Reish Lakish has to agree with Rav Sheshes as we proved. And the 3rd possible interpretation, which is Rav Nachman's, and that is kol shenasa dom b'acher means matbea, but it's moel b'toras kinyan kesef. In other words, he's going to pay up his obligation to purchase X by giving kesef, and that's called chalipin. And the chov of mechira, that's called a kinyan kesef, and the chov of mechira shor is kona the parah. And of course, since Rav Nachman rejects Rav Sheshes and the holds peri eino mosim chalipin, he cannot accept the previous interpretation. He holds like Rav Yochanan and B'deraisa mos konos. And this leads us to the Mishnah here on Chav Chesam and Beis. And the question is, we have a principle called Amirasol leGavah k'Mesirasol leHedge. Mishnah establishes Rishus HaGavah in regard to Hegdesh b'Kesef. You could be Kona with the kinyan Kesef. And Rishus HaHedjot is b'Chazaka, meaning with Meshicha. Amirasol leGavah k'Mesirasol leHedjot. When a person declares that this is Hegdesh, he's makna his possession to Hegdesh as if he gave it over to Hegdesh, even though he didn't give it over to Hegdesh. But the statement, the declaration is enough of a hakna. Tana Rabbana, we learned in the Brisa, Keitzad Rishus Gavah v'Kesef. What does it mean that, as the Mishnah says it, Rishus Gavah v'Kesef, Gizbar Shenosan Mos b'Behema, a Gizbar representing Hegdesh gave Mos to the Kona Behema as a Korban Tzibur, is Afilu Behema B'Sofa Olam, even if the animal is located on the other side of the globe, Kona. Ubehejot, Lo Kona Chiyimshach. But in the case of a kinyan hejot, you want to buy a chayfetz, then the Chosim She'en Be'em Achrayis Ein Niknim Ela B'Meshicha. Keitzad Amirasol Gavah K'Mesirasol leHedjot HaOmer Shor Zeh Ola Bayis Zeh Hegdesh Afilu B'Sofa Olam. Even if the Shor of the Bayis on the other side of the world and the Gizbar never did a kinyan, nevertheless Kana Hegdesh is Koda. Whereas Behejot Lo Koda, because Behejot Amir is not enough to effectuate a kinyan, you need a kinyan Meshicha. And here we turn to Chav Tes, Ad Sheyimshok v'Yachzik. In Hejot, you need Mashiach on the shore or Chazak on the vice. But when it comes to Hegdesh, Amirasol leGavah k'Mesirasol leHedjot.